Yes, we're supporting the rebels in Libya. Well, here's the thing. NATO, you know how you spell NATO, right? U.S. Okay. NATO pulls out. The United States pulls out of NATO. Well, we didn't pull out of NATO. We said we're not going to bomb anymore. We're turning it over to NATO. And NATO's got France sent 8 planes, jets, and then England is going to send 16 more. I think that's all they have. And they're saying now that they don't have enough planes to launch missions and to follow up because of what's going on there. So basically, the United States is going to have to come back in. The rebels have pretty much given up. So because they waited so long. So in Libya, we're backing the forces against Gaddafi, who are rebels, but are also happen to be Al Qaeda. Some happen to be Al Qaeda, so that's good. We're supporting Al Qaeda fighting against Libya because Al Qaeda and the United States are like this, man. How we are. Cool, man. Homies down from day one. That day one would be September 11, 2001. All right, so what is going on history-wise with Japan? Japan, having a good day? United States, having a good day? No, not having a good day at all. All right? Pearl Harbor. 6 battleships sunk or damaged. You get the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. That England does these lightning strikes on the Dutch East Indies, New Guinea, all these areas, as far up as the Aleutian Island chain, that little crazy beard that comes off of Alaska. Because Alaska looks kind of like a face, So, all this area they've taken. And of all the areas that they've taken, there's one that has the hardest time, the hardest hit, the worst possible location, and that is the United States forces in the Philippines. Why? Why? Well, there is a naval base there. It was an occupation force. We took the Philippines in the Spanish-American War. We've been there. It's been kind of a place for people to go and have a good time. The troops that are there are not supplied for a siege. They don't have the weaponry. They don't have the training. They're not combat troops. They're not used to that type of stuff. And guess what? Eventually they're going to run out of supplies. And when it comes time for them to get resupplies, where are they going to come from? Oh, let's send them by boat. Well, we're going to have to send them by boat from where? Closest place is Hawaii. We'll get all really technical here. Okay. Is that going to happen? Why not? Too deep into Japanese territory. All right. Well, then let's send airplanes. Is that going to happen? Shot down? Range isn't long enough. It'd be a suicide mission to get there. It's not going to happen. So, unfortunately, we just have to leave these guys there.
What's wrong with Australia?
Still too deep there. Yeah, Australia, you don't have the forces. To get to Australia, you'd have to go, pretty far down there, and it's not going to happen. Now, ma'am? Huh? So what happens at the Philippines is the American troops are going to pull back to a peninsula called the Bataan Peninsula, and from there they're going to fall back to kind of like the Philippines version of the Rock of Gibraltar. It's called Corregidor. It's an island, a rock island off the tip of the Bataan Peninsula, and it has been made into a fortress. It is impregnable. Japanese are going to have to lay a siege to it to get the Americans out. Now, the most important person that is in the Philippines is the commander of the army, General Douglas MacArthur. MacArthur had made a name for himself, you'll remember, when we talked about the bonus army. Hoover sent him out to go and get the bonus army off of the Capitol grounds. He then takes that as carte blanche to pursue them back to their town. And there at their town that they had created, their shanty town, he's going to burn the town down. FDR would say that's the most dangerous man in the United States. We need to watch him. Well, now he is commander-in-chief of the army forces in the Philippines. We cannot let him be captured. So what happens is we arrange for a fast ship to come up from Australia, hit the Philippines, pick him and his family up, and evacuate them. Before he leaves, he says, "I shall return." Tells the people of the Philippines that he will be back. But he's the only one that escapes. He and his family are the only ones that escape. The U.S. cannot resupply the forces. There's just no way that we can get supplies to them to be able to survive. So what happens is eventually, on April 9th, 1942, Corregidor and the forces at the Bataan Peninsula fall. Now, there are around 25,000 American soldiers there. In addition to that, there's around 70 to 100,000 Filipino soldiers that surrender also. What happens next is probably one of the worst war crimes committed by the Japanese during the war. It is known as the Bataan Death March. Now, under Japanese codes, they do not believe in what? What is one thing when it comes to time for battles? They don't believe in what? They will not surrender. They do not surrender. That is the ultimate loss of face and loss of honor. To combat that, in turn, they would rather take a honorable death. Now, either through suicide or, usually through suicide. Now, how many guys have ever heard of Harry Carey? What is Harry Carey? Take the sword and you put it through. No, they are different. Harry Carey is through the stomach right here. Okay? So they fall on your sword, and that's what you see on television. Harry Carey is for someone who has dishonored themselves. Actually, well, suicide like this is. Typically what happens is when you do Harry Carey, you're a female, because that's what women do. Okay? The other one is seppuku. And this is what generals, colonels, and things like that would do. They would take a sword, they'd get on their knees, face Japan, take the sword, shove it into their stomach. And then they would push up. And then they would push over. Okay? Make sure that they're, oh, I'm dying, versus I'm up a creek without a paddle now. Right? Depending on how much they were able to withstand of that, they would have a orderly, a staff officer with a pistol there as well, and when the pain got too much, would blow their brains out. Okay? Now here's the thing. The way the Japanese ensured discipline was through physical violence. It was no big deal for them to slap a general to slap a colonel. It was seen as acceptable. It was seen as standard. A colonel would slap a major. A major would slap a captain. Captain would slap a lieutenant. Lieutenant would slap his sergeant. Sergeant would slap the corporal. The corporal would slap the privates. Slap the privates. That sounds bad. Slap the privates. Slap the private. I'm going to have to go back and edit that portion. Slap the private, okay? So what happens now is if you're the private, who do you get to hit? Okay. All right, here's the deal. Nicole, you got the highest test on the last grade, on the last exam, all right? Highest grade on the last exam, okay? Say yes. Say sure, because you did, but we'll make it up there. Trent over there made the lowest grade. Okay? Go slap him. Okay? Everybody in here who made higher than Trent, go slap him. How's that going to make Trent feel? All right, Trent, you slap the person who's made the lower grade than you. Oh, wait a minute. Nobody did, so you can't slap anybody. So people like Trent in the Japanese government, in the Japanese military, would be charged with the lowest form of duty. They'd be assigned the most despicable jobs imaginable. Now, what's the most despicable jobs imaginable in their culture? What is the worst thing you can do as a Japanese person? We just talked about it. Surrender. Okay? So these Americans just surrendered. Your job is to guard them. Okay? So these are people who have no honor. These are people, and in a society in which honor is the most important thing in the world, they have no honor. They surrendered. And guess what? They're beneath you. So everybody's been beating you up. Everybody's been beating up on Trent. What's he going to do? He's going to beat up on them. Now, once this was over, the forces from the Philippines would have to march 60 miles, and would be forced to march 60 miles without any form of supplies from the Japanese to a camp that had been established for them. Around 60,000 would march. When they get there, 50,000 are still alive. 10,000 would die on this 60-mile march. Now, they would die from exhaustion. If they fell down, they would either be killed by the Japanese soldiers or they just left there for the men to walk over them. They're in a tank. They would drive over them. When you read your article for this exam that's coming, this next exam, there's a section in there that talks about how the only way you could tell that this splotch in the earth, what had once been a man who had been trampled on so many times, was that you could still see where the uniform and the skin parted, because it was that flat. Now, on this march, Filipino women would rush out and give supplies to the men. Here's some water, here's some food. And the Japanese soldiers would take those women and they would kill them. Hampton Sides wrote a book called Ghost Soldiers. It's about the Bataan Death March, and it's also about the United States Rangers detachment that saves them at the end of the war. In this, he recounts an action in which a Filipino woman who was about 7 months pregnant comes rushing out to give some of the soldiers water. Japanese soldier takes a bayonet, shoves it through her lung, doesn't get her through her heart, into a tree. Then takes his knife out and cuts the child out of her womb, and then gives it to him and says, "Here, now you can die together." Utter and complete brutality. Sheer lack of regard for anyone else. Why? Why are they like this? Because they have been trained this way. Remember when we talked about the military academies? Since birth, since school, that is what they've been taught. Is it an excuse? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But what I'm trying to show you is the fanaticism that was in the Japanese culture. So when you get to the point in 1945 when we say, we've got a bomb that we can drop that will save millions of American lives, but it's going to cost maybe 200,000 Japanese lives. But that actually becomes the type of a decision that people would say, okay, because it's going to be necessary. As you well know, there are people who today say, well, we shouldn't have dropped the atomic bomb. Full blank. That was the only thing that woke them up. It was the only thing that woke them up. The capability to wipe an entire city out in just a few moments. Now, FDR is going to say very publicly and very honestly that after Pearl Harbor, all the news that was coming in was very bad. There was nothing going right for the United States. However, One thing that was in our favor is that we already had 1.4 million soldiers that had been drafted. They were already being trained. They were already being prepared to go to war. Our economy had not yet shifted over to war, but that is going to happen rather quickly. In the passage of the War Powers Act of 1941, FDR is given the power to restructure government agencies so that they are more efficient to meet the war effort needs. In the Second War Powers Act, they are going to provide for the rationing of raw materials so that these can go to the war effort. We'll see more about that in a minute, how that actually goes, because there's going to be some major problems that are going to have to be dealt with. Now, there's only so much petroleum that can be refined. There's only so much rubber that can be made into war efforts. And if the drain from the American people is still going, it is going to be a problem. Now, here's something. When do people spend more money? When the economy's good or the economy's going bad? It's going good, right? You're going to go buy that new car if you've got a new job. Now, here's the thing that a lot of people like to tell you, and it is not true. And that is FDR and the New Deal ended the Great Depression. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No sirree Bob to FDR and the New Deal in the Great Depression. What ended the Great Depression was the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Because what you're going to see is almost overnight, the United States is going to go from having an unemployment problem, where you have 17, 18% of the population unemployed and there's just no physical jobs out there, to a different type of employment problem where the demand for employers cannot be met. Dock workers, welders, construction workers, if you want a job, you're going to be able to get it. All you have to do is go and open your eyes and look for it. Instead of a factory working one 8-hour shift, they're now working 3 8-hour shifts. 2 jobs are possible. 3 jobs are possible if you're crazy. Women are going to join the work effort. Rosie the Riveter is going to be a call to arms for women to go out and work in construction. The War Production Board is going to be created. That's going to oversee the conversion of the industries, the private industries, to the war effort. Hamilton Beach, who makes blenders, is going to retool completely to make tanks. Big difference. Blenders, tanks. Now, how many of you guys remember Hurricane Katrina? Okay? Hurricane Katrina. If you wanted to make some money in Hurricane Katrina, you know how you did it? Did what? Yeah, we went down there and cleaned up. My wife was working for State Farm at the time, and they were paying like $1,000 a day for insurance adjusters to go down there just to write. $1,000 a day. Like, you should go do that. She's like, no. Like, why not? She's got small kids. I'm like, I said, I'll watch them for $365,000. We'll do that. I'll watch them. I'll quit my job for $365,000 because they were there for several years. But anyway, what you do is you go to Home Depot. Go to Home Depot and you buy all the gas-powered generators you can find. They're $100. Okay? I don't know how much they really are, but for this example, you do that. And then you drive east. As soon as you cross the Louisiana border, they're now worth $500. Close you get to New Orleans, they're $600, $700, $800, $900, $1,000. Why? Because everyone's out and they needed them. Now, when Hurricane, I think it was Rita hit Houston and like that little area, Houston and Louisiana, that area right there. There was a guy in Mississippi, because he knew what happened with Katrina, raised his gas prices to $6.35 a gallon. And then the almighty hand of George W. Bush, the President Almighty, came down and smacked him upside his head and charged them with price gouging. You know, there's a difference here because this guy, there was no need for that to happen. All right. So what happens is that was way above the norm. What happens is we are going to create the Office of Price Administration. This is going to set price ceilings. All right. There's a huge demand for sugar, and sugar's going for $1 a pound before the war. Well, the Office of Price Administration is going to keep it as $1 a pound. They're going to say you can't charge any more for that. You're already making a profit. You're not going to make, you're not going to charge $6 and make an absurd amount of profit off of this. This is not going to happen. It happened in World War I. We're not going to let it happen again. Now, something else they do, it should be something else that they take action on, is that they do not address wage prices or farm prices. Why? What happened when they fixed prices on wheat in World War I? Hey, $2 a bushel. What happened afterwards? So they said whatever the going rate is the going rate. We're not going to artificially inflate it. We're going to keep it at that point. And wages. They're not going to set limits on wages because that's just not right, they say. So, now, this is going to start the government is going to start a program encouraged to make people use what they have. If money is going good, your wife comes to you and says, hey, I need some money because I need some more makeup. Well, did you buy makeup last week? Yeah, I just don't like the color of it. It just doesn't pop, and I really want it to pop. Okay? Now, girls are all like, I know what they're talking about. Girls know what I'm talking about. What they do is my wife like, oh, do you like this lipstick? Did you buy lipstick yesterday? Oh, it's not the right color. Did you buy lipstick? Oh, it's not. Can't you return it? No. After you've used it, you can return lipstick? That's gross.
Well,
You should.
They're not supposed to resell it.
That's gross. Anyway, but they do. It's like Walmart not, reselling meat after the expiration date. It's all green and they put red dye in it. So you'll buy it. So, believe me, I worked at Walmart. I know these stories. So anyhow, come up with a policy of use it up, wear it out, make do, or live without. Use it up. You got a little bit enough of lipstick left? Use it till it's gone. Wear it out. How many guys have ever seen cartoons from this era, the 1940s, and there's a guy driving around in an old jalopy car, and his tires look like inner tubes, and it's got a white patch on it? You patch tires because a patch is cheaper than buying a new tire. And if it wasn't your year to buy new tires, you had to make do. Live without? Hey, there you go. Can't have it. Sorry. Now, people were encouraged to plant their own gardens. You got a patch of grass outside, till it up. Put in some tomato seeds, put in some beans, put in some corn. Make yourself a victory garden. The more self-sufficient you are, the more supplies of produce we can send overseas to our allies and to feed the GIs. So there's a big push for this. Now, rationing is introduced. We've already talked about that. If you have an A ration card, you can get gas on Monday. If you're a B, you get gas on Tuesday. C, D, you can figure it out. Don't try to go get gas on Friday with an A ration card because you will be turned away. It's not your day. Now, one of the biggest things that's going to help the war effort is going to be the creation of the Big Inch. The Big Inch is a 1,300-mile long, 24-inch oil and gas pipeline that runs from New York to Texas. Not just Texas, but down to Houston. Why? What is Houston known as? When you get to the ship channel, you get down to that area, what do you see a lot of? You see a lot of refineries, right? It's like the number one, Texas is the number one refinery state in the nation. Now, how do you get, before you have a pipeline like this, how do you get oil from Houston to New York? 2 ways. Train or what? Train or what? I said train. What else did you say? Trucks? Not as big. Ships. Ships. But what did I tell you last time we met about the guy that lived on the next block from where my mom lived? He was a German spy. He was radioing when these oil tankers were leaving and U-boats were sinking them. So, starts in 41. The Big Inch is completed in 43. That's pretty darn quick for a 1,300-mile submerged pipeline. And it is going to free up tremendous amounts of railroad and shipping. So that's going to really help. New technologies are going to be developed as well. Radar is going to be enhanced. It's going to be made easier to read and easier. It's going to cut down on the background static. Something that doesn't really come into play with the war, but is invented during this time. The scientist is messing with these 2 radioactive pieces of metal, and he's leaning over it, and he's got a chocolate bar in his pocket, and he goes and he finishes, and he goes over, and he's going to have his break time and snack time. He pulls out his chocolate bar, and it's all gushy. What happened? What did he discover? Microwaves. He's going to take that knowledge and put it to use, try to come up with a weapon. That's what he was doing. He's trying to create a weapon, and he comes up with a microwave, the thing that you use every single day when you make your dinner of popcorn and ramen noodles. Huh? Something else they're going to create is something to deal with tanks. Tanks are great. They're wonderful. Except when they're coming at you. And then your rifle just doesn't do a very good job. Grenades don't do a very good job. How many of you guys play Call of Duty? All right, raise your hand and play Call of Duty. How do you take a tank out? Okay, an RPG, also known as a. Okay, now those don't come around until a little bit later. What we start out with are bazookas. Okay. Create bazookas, and guess what? The bazookas that we designed were designed and tested on the tanks that we had available to test. And what type of tanks did we have available to test? World War I tanks or our tanks. So when we get into Operation Torch and we actually get into a battle and we fire a bazooka against a German Panther, it hits, bounces off. Right? One of the cool things about Call of Duty is you kill the Germans, and that's always good. And once you kill the Germans, you pick up their weapons because they got cool weapons. Well, one of the weapons that you get to pick up every now and then is a Panzerschreck, which is their version of the anti-tank gun. Okay, awesome. You know, it's imagine Call of Duty for real, where these guys, ooh, a Panzerschreck, and you pick it up. All right, bazooka, throw down. You know, I'm hitting F to get that Panzerschreck. Oh, reload. You know, so what happens here is you get all these new technologies, and a lot of the things that they're going to design during this time are really going to come back to help us. Now, at the beginning of the war, yes, sir?
I was just going to say, my grandmother grew up in Germany during World War II, and she lived in Saarland, which is right next to France. And when the Third Army was coming in and the Wehrmacht was retreating, they put Panzerschrecks on people's doorsteps with instructions saying, like,
that's cool.
when the Allied tanks and everything come through, here's what you need to do. And she said that her dad was like, nah, I don't think so. And everybody in town buried them so that they wouldn't get in trouble.
Well, they didn't really have to worry at first when they went in because the French get their arms up to go to war. It's more like that. So that's the French marching pattern. So what happens now is at the beginning of the war, FDR sees this as being paid for by taxes. Now, does he raise taxes? No. Doesn't have to. Why?
Because there's a lot more jobs now.
A lot more jobs, a lot more production, and there's a lot more production. The existing tax rate is perfectly good because all that money is just coming in. But by the time we get to about 43, 44, 45, it's getting a little bit low. funds are getting a little bit low, so we're going to launch 3 war drives in which people go out and they bring in war heroes, especially after the Battle of Iwo Jima. You're going to bring in the flag raisers to go and tour and try to raise money. People are, frankly, starting to get a little tired of paying all this money instead of paying taxes, because when you pay taxes, you never see the money, but when you pay war bonds, what are you doing? You're actually saying, okay, here's a 20. You're buying it. Now, one of the areas that they are going to, the government's really going to concentrate on in getting people to actually participate and getting support for the war bonds is they're going to turn their attention to the cartoon companies, Warner Brothers and Disney. Walt Disney, big anti-communist. Big anti-communist. How many guys know why Donald Duck was created? Well, he's actually before Hitler. It's communism. He doesn't like communists. His first. What does Donald Duck wear? Sailor suit. He's in the Navy, right? Okay. How many of you guys could imagine Mickey Mouse machine gunning Nazis? Okay. No hands are going up. How many guys can imagine Donald Duck machine gunning Nazis? Okay. Or communists? Why? Because he's a little bad-tempered. You know this to be true. Okay? That's why he's there. Now, one of the ways they do this is they're going to create these little cartoons that are going to play beforehand at movies. Watch the end. It's really funny.
The tall man with a high hat and a whiskers on his chin will soon be knocking at your door, and you ought to be in. The tall man with the high hat will be coming down your way. Get your savings out when you hear him shout, any bonds today? Come on and get 'em, folks. Come on, skip right up and get 'em. Any bonds today? Bonds of freedom, that's what I'm selling. Any bonds today? Scrape up the most you can. Here comes the freedom man, asking you to buy your share of freedom today. Many stamps today. Give kiddies. We'll be blessed. We all invest in the USA. Sammy, my Uncle Sammy.
Here comes the freedom man.
Can't make tomorrow's plan.
Not unless you buy a share of freedom today. Any stamps, any bonds today.
They're selling at this theater. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's all rise and sing the national anthem. Talk about high-pressure tactics. They're selling them there. They're showing it beforehand, and then they're going to come out and sell it while you're there, saying, hey, you going to buy? Are you an American? You're going to buy and support the war effort, right? See? All right. What? You're not going to buy? Tommy, you're going to buy? Yes, of course you are, because you want to be a communist like her. Yes.
This may be a dumb question.
No such thing as dumb question.
What was racist in it?
The blackface of Bugs Bunny.
Oh, well, okay.
It was I can't remember the guy's name, but he was a comedian at that time, and he was a white performer who would perform in blackface. And if and all you had was like white around your lips. I don't know why, but there's a lot of things that were made during that time period that you can't show anymore. One of my favorite ones is falling hair. We'll probably watch that when I come back. But there's a scene that Bugs Bunny goes flying through. He's in an airplane. He goes flying through one side to the other. And when I saw it as a kid, I know I saw this once. He turns and he looks down and he sees these out over the middle of nowhere in the air. And he turns into a donkey and it says jackass across his side. Well, then I saw it like 5 years later, and it said, goes out and he turns into a lollipop and it says sucker across it, because jackass is bad, but I've got the good jackass here. So we'll watch that later. So now one of the things that is the most embarrassing, but still necessary issues is the Japanese resettlement camps. We would force around 5,000 Japanese Americans who were born in the United States but were Japanese descent, and force them to go to resettlement camps, places that they would be relocated across the nation. They were forced to sell their homes. They were forced to sell their houses, sometimes houses, businesses, sometimes on pennies on the dollar. Now, this was done, and a lot of people say this is a violation of their civil rights. And I agree, it is a violation of civil rights, but it was necessary. In World War I, who did we fight? Germans, okay? And who were, how do you tell a German American from European American, English American? How do you tell a Japanese American from a European American? You just have to look at them, okay? FDR is worried about spies, yes. There are several thousand soldiers who are of Japanese descent in the United States military. Once the war starts, they're reclassified 4F, which means they're unfit to serve, and they are removed from the Army. He does this because he's worried about violence. He's worried about Americans, European Americans, attacking those Japanese citizens. You may have played on the same team, the same baseball team, with this Japanese guy that you know since forever, and you're in high school, and then all of a sudden you hear about Pearl Harbor, the Japanese bombing, and your brother was on the Arizona. You just lost your brother, and all of a sudden your friend, who's Japanese, comes over to your house and say, "Man, I'm so sorry about your brother." What is possible there? Doesn't matter that you've known that person for their own life. It comes down to Japanese descent, European descent, and there is a threat of violence there. It is done for the safety of the United States, but it's also done for the safety of those individuals who are relocated. Is it right? No. Is it fair? No. Was it wrong? Yes. Was it necessary? Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm not giving a pass to the United States, but you know what? In the long run, it was a good decision. Now, last thing we're going to talk about. Yes, sir.
Don't you think they could have given them a little bit better, like, living quarters in those camps, though? Because I saw some of those pictures, and it seriously looked like Nazi camps.
Well, okay. It seriously looked like Nazi camps, but were they treated like the Jews? No, absolutely not. They weren't. Nobody died.
Yeah.
Nobody died that were relocated there. It was the best we could do on the short notice that we had. Okay, so and there's you guys know who George Takei is? How many guys have ever seen the original Star Trek? Sulu. Okay, his family was one of those individuals, and he is very big on reparations from the United States for his family and what happened to them. I agree that was wrong, but I'm not so sure reparations are necessary. You know, I'm not a big fan of, we goofed up here, we're going to pay you 50 years later.
How long was it that they were in those camps?
The war was over. Yeah.
Like from the beginning to the end?
Yeah. No.
Were they able to recover any of their stuff back, like their houses that they sold?
I think it's probably individual. You'd have to look individually. That's a very good question. I don't know. I'm sure. I would guess the answer for most of it is no. So now, where are we going to go? Who attacked us? Who are we going to go attack now that we're ready to go to war? We're going to go attack Germany. Why? Because England is hanging by a string. They're the Allies, and we need to help them. They need some help. If we lose England, the Atlantic is cut off. Does Japan control the Pacific? No. Hitler is the more dangerous opponent. As a result, the opinion of, and FDR is persuaded to this, the opinion of the Joint Chief of Staff is that we have to go to Europe first. Doesn't mean we're not going to go to Pacific as well. We're going to send the Marines over to the Pacific. And they're going to fight. We'll talk about that later. We're going to handle the European theater of operations first, and then we're going to deal with the Pacific. We're going to deal with them in chunks. But that doesn't mean we're not going to give Japan something to remember us by. As a result, Lieutenant Colonel Jimmy Doolittle is charged with a secret mission. He goes and he gathers up the best and the brightest United States Army Air Force pilots that there are. And he takes them to a secluded air base. And he says, all right, you guys are going to fly B-25s, big, hulking monster ships, big old airplanes, bombers. He says, you're going to take off from 700 feet. They say, can't be done. He says, I say it can. Prove me wrong. Those that can, he says, all right, you've made the cut. Those who can't, goodbye. He says, all right, 600 feet. Those who can, stay. Those who don't, leave. 500 feet. Those who can, stay. Those who can't, leave. Gets down to 450 feet. Usually it was around 1,000. So he says, all right, you guys have made the cut. We're going to San Diego. They go to San Diego. Once they get there, they see the USS Hornet with their 16 planes on it already. USS Hornet is a carrier. The bombers are Army planes. Never before and never again have Army planes flown off of a naval vessel. He says, all right, guys, now that you made the cut and we are leaving, we're on the Hornet and we're leaving, I'm telling you what we're doing. We're going to go bomb Tokyo. Okay. They leave and they are on a radio silence, not communicating with anyone until they get to the takeoff point. Supposed to take off on the 19th of April, 1942, but unfortunately they are discovered by a Japanese fishing trawler. The trawler radios back that there's an American ship in Japanese water before the Americans are able to destroy it. Doolittle then makes the decision to launch 10 hours early and 170 miles away from their optimal flying area. They take off. All 16 ships are able to get into the air from the 450-foot deck of the Hornet. That was the goal. That was why 450 feet. They take off, they fly. Now, they get over their target and they drop their bombs. Here's the deal. There is an expatriate United States citizen who is renounced her citizenship, who is become a radio broadcaster known as Tokyo Rose, and she is giving a propaganda speech over the radio to the Japanese citizens when these bombs start falling about how strong Japan is, how it is blessed by the gods, how the home islands cannot be bombed, that if were bombs to be dropped, the gods would protect them and that they would not land as these bombs fall. We don't do much damage. That's not the point of this goal. I mean, that's not what this is designed to do. It's designed to let Japan know that we're remembering them. We're going to Europe, but they're on our list. Now, this is a one-way trip. Once the 16th ship left the Hornet turned around and sailed back to safety. Of those 16 ships, 15 of them bail out over China, friendly China. Doolittle jumps out and parachutes, lands in a pile of human dung, and saves an injured ankle from breaking. The 16th ship has to go to, can only make it to Russia, and crash lands. They get out and they survive, but however, they are taken hostage and taken prisoner by the Russians. Remember, Russia are not our allies. They are the guys we're fighting the war with. Okay? That's important for when we get to the end of the war. So what happens now is Japan says they captured one. Doolittle says, well, they captured the 17th ship, obviously. Well, how many took off? They captured the 17th of the 16 ships that flew off the Hornet's deck. you're good at math, you know what the heck that means. So, what happens is he comes back and he's sure that it is a failure. He's sure he's going to be court-martialed because the Doolittle raid was such a disaster. He gets back, finds America's morale boosted tremendously. He's promoted to general. Japan is freaking out. They pull a lot of their forces that they are intending to go attack Midway with, pull it to cover back, to provide cover in case this happens again for the home islands. And when FDR is asked by a reporter, it says, where did these planes come from? Where could they come from? They don't have that big of a range, and they couldn't have come off a carrier. It's not possible. FDR says, they came from the mythical land of Shangri-La. FDR knows how to play. All right. It freaked the Japanese out tremendously, and it actually makes our battle at Midway successful for us because the Japanese hold so many forces back. All right. Good luck on your exam when you have it.